What is up, YouTube? Today I'm coming back at you with another video, and today's video is going to be another tabletop RPG review. Now, I haven't done one of these videos in a while, mainly because I haven't gotten a whole lot of new RPG related products lately. I did get a few things. I did get the Essentials kit for D&D 5th edition, and this book that I'm going to be talking about today, basically. I do have some more RPG stuff coming in the mail, actually, that I just ordered because Target's having a buy two get one free, and pretty much all of their tabletop RPG products are available in that sale, so I picked up some more RPG stuff for that. But today we're going to be talking about a brand new release for one of my favorite RPG systems that I love making videos about it because not many people are talking about this game anymore, and I'm trying to show as much support for it as possible and putting out as many videos for this as possible so more people check this game system out, because I like it. We're going to be talking about the new Fantasy Age Campaign Builder's Guide. Now, this is the newest release in the Fantasy Age series of books. I have every book out for this game, and this is the newest one. There's actually another book coming out next in like a week or so, called Fantasy Age Layers, and I'm really excited for that book. I cannot wait to get that one. But right now we've got the Campaign Builder's Guide. Now this is a book that is very, very useful for GMs of Fantasy Age. Now, I wouldn't say that this is a necessary purchase for a GM. I feel like this is not something that you're required to have, but it is insanely helpful, and not only for people running Fantasy Age, but it's also really, really helpful for anybody running any game, and I'll explain why. So, first, as always, let's go over the construction of the book and a little bit of, just the outside and flip through it and the construction. So, first off, the cover art. As I've said with every other Fantasy Age book, the artwork in this book and on the cover is amazing. I absolutely love the art style that they've gone with for the Fantasy Age series. Here's a comparison to, here's the basic rule book, and as you can see, same great art style. Absolutely love the art style that they've gone with. Really cool. Here's the back cover, and yeah, I did purchase this at full retail price from my local store just to support local business, but it's fantastic. I absolutely love the artwork. Now, one thing that I will say about this book that was a little disappointing is the binding. Now, this is the first book that I've gotten from the Fantasy Age line that is actually like this, but this binding is not the same quality binding as the other books. And it took me a little bit to realize that. I didn't realize until I bought it and got home, but I'm not too upset about it. Just something to be aware of for those of you looking to buy this book. But this is actually, I don't know if you'll even be able to see it on camera. This is not a sewn binding. If you look here, like I said, I'm not sure if you're able to see it. On the basic rule book right there, you can see it's sewn into fabric. And that's what a lot of RPG products do. And especially high quality RPG products will always have a sewn binding because it is the highest quality binding you can get, and it will last the longest. This is actually using a standard perfect bound hardcover binding. Now this isn't horrible. Pretty much anything that you buy from DriveThruRPG will be bound this way. Some of the smaller indie games are bound this way, but it is not up to the same quality as any of the other basic, not basic, but any of the other Fantasy Age books. That is the biggest downside. And now I'm not sure why they decided to go this route. Maybe it's a cost-saving measure because I know Fantasy Age isn't the most popular RPG franchise, but or if it's just because of the page count, because this is the slimmest book in their line. I think it only comes in at like 120 pages or something like that. 125 pages total, including the character sheet, well, not character sheet, but the campaign sheet at the back and the index. So this is the slimmest book in the line that they've released so far. But this does have a lot of material in here, and why I say it has a lot of material in here is unfortunately there's not a lot of artwork in here, so you don't have a whole lot of artwork to look at, which is really unfortunate for this series because I love the art style that they've got. But That means that they were able to pack more information per page. So you do still get a lot of information, you just don't have a lot of pictures or anything to look at for inspiration or whatever, which is one downside. So let's get into the contents and what actually is the Campaign Builder's Guide. So, get into it here. So what is the Campaign Builder's Guide? The Campaign Builder's Guide, this is, I'm not sure if you'll be able to read any of that, but that's everything that's in there. And basically what this is this is a toolbox for GMs. This is purely for GMs only. The only people that are getting any use out of this book are GMs. So players, unfortunately, you're not going to have anything in here. There's no new specializations, no new powers or anything like that. This is purely just for GMs. But what you do get in here is very valuable to a GM. So the first chapter is called The Campaign Framework, Building the Campaign Framework. And this is a invaluable resource to not only Fantasy Age GMs, but any GM. It basically tells you, good ideas on how to build an effective and interesting campaign. And there's no stats for this section at all. There's no like monsters or anything. This is purely just, here's some ideas, here's some ways to implement it, here's some effective ways to run a 3-arc campaign, a 5-arc campaign, a plot point to plot point campaign, or open world sandbox campaign. It tells you effective ways and ideas to how to run these different style campaigns, and it gives you tools to use those, including tables. Most of the tables, all the tables in this book use a D6 only because of the system itself only uses D6s. But it doesn't really have an impact on other games. So it shows you here probabilities on your D6 rolls. So it says it tells you the probabilities of a 2D6 roll and what rolls have different probabilities for 3D6 rolls, and then specifically for Fantasy Age, stunt point probabilities, which is really good to know. These are just really helpful things to just know, bare bones. It has little notes from the authors in these little boxes here, and they just give you tips that they've experienced and things that they've learned over their years of GMing. For instance, this one is called Saying Yes to Your Players, which is something that I think that GMs should get in the habit of doing, because you have to remember, this isn't just for you, this is also for your players. Yes, you also want to make sure that you're having fun running the game, but you also want to make sure that everybody's having a good time. So don't be afraid to say yes, and also don't be afraid to say no. So it gives you some really good advice in there. Here's some more example of some beautiful artwork. And it also gives you examples of different already templates for campaign settings. So it has a couple different campaign framework examples here, and it's got ones called The Wasteland. I'll read the first paragraph here. The characters operate in a blasted landscape that was once the home to a mighty empire. And my bunny is moving his food bowl around. What was once the beautiful landscape filled with castles and cities is now a barren wasteland, and maybe hot and a sandy desert, or a frigid tundra, or even an overgrown jungle. More exotic options include sunken continent, or regions still plagued by the after effects of a magical mishap. The heroes travel this wasteland, scavenging forgotten treasures and helping others navigate through it. So it gives you, there's like 5 more paragraphs about this like mini framework, but it gives you a couple different frameworks for new GMs, which is why I say this is really invaluable for any game, really. But it gives you a couple different frameworks for running, some more stereotypical style adventures. Like Wasteland's pretty stereotypical. You have one here for high seas adventures. Mercenaries is a very popular one. You've also got one called the Game of Fiefs, which is gives you a framework for running a game in a single city, which is really cool. Gutters and Guilds, pretty self-explanatory. Blades Against the Horse for like a horror-style campaign. Cry for Freedom, you have The Quest, and then you have some other various ones as well. It also tells you, gives you information on building campaign arcs and how to arc a storyline properly. Tells you how to do rising action, stuff like that. It gives you ideas and stuff for how to keep things interesting. Then it goes into the next chapter, which is building adventures. Now, adventures and campaigns are different. Adventures are a single session, and campaigns are multiple sessions. So just to clarify that. So then it goes into how to build adventures and how to use adventures in campaigns. It tells you how to build one-shot adventures using published adventures. It gives you advice for that, and it gives you subsections of going off the rails, just rolling, and then it's got some advice down here, just saying just roll with it, be honest, adjust and adapt. So there's really good, like, these things can be applied to any game, which is why I say this is a great book for just anybody that's GMing anything. And then it goes into adventure formats. It tells you how to build 3-act adventures, 5-act adventures, and plot point to plot point adventures. Then it goes more into designing adventures, defining the story. And then gives you some sample adventure samples, basically like, and a little play-by-play down here in this one. But it gives you some adventures, some sample settings for adventures and arcs and stuff. The next chapter, sorry about me coughing quite a lot. It's the weather's been changing crazy in Ohio, so my allergies have been acting up. But the next chapter is building encounters. Building encounters is a very important step. This one applies more to Fantasy Age than any of the other chapters thus far. But building encounters, some of the stuff in here can be applied to other games, but like I said, this one's geared more towards Fantasy Age because we're getting more towards the combat-centric area, which Fantasy Age has a different system than a lot of other systems. So it goes there's a couple different pages about building different types of encounters. Hazard encounters, more traps and oriented stuff. Role-playing encounters, things that would be solved through role-play. Hybrid stuff. How to building encounters that you can avoid. So there's a lot of different tips for building encounters. Then it's got some sample concepts, some more advice like drawing a map, how to draw a map, stuff like that. There's actually a decent amount of artwork in here. It's not like as present as in the other books, but you do have, like, at the beginning of every chapter, you'll have some artwork. So there's a little bit of artwork in here, but like I said, not a lot. Most of it's text, like this page right here. Then it goes into building locations, which is another chapter that can be used pretty much towards any RPG, which is really great. This is actually my favorite section in this book, is building locations. They've got a lot of great advice in here. They've got stuff for familiar locations, for things that your players might have seen before, mood pieces, recurring locations, and then it gives creating locations. First it gives you like concept, and then you want to go to the history of the location, then it gives you a section on inhabitants and then the current situation, and then it gives you, there's another author's note, which I really like how they're doing the author's notes in this book. And it says, sometimes less is more, which is something that I've found to be true a lot of times. Leave some of it up to your player's imagination. Physical description. There's a large section on how to do a good physical description. And then it gives a nice section down here to how to add stunt locations to your locations, which is really cool. And then it gives some example locations. This one's called Eperia Past and Present. And there's this whole cool location. And the really cool thing about this is it's got example stuff in here, so you can literally take this location if you really want to and just drop it in your campaign somewhere, which is really awesome. I like that a lot because it gives you a full concept, full history, full of its what kind of inhabitants are there, the current situation there, physical description, and all the stuff that you would really need. And this is why, and this next part is why the location, building a location, is my favorite part of this book, is the random tables. There's quite a number of random tables in here. And basically this one is for building businesses, random businesses. You have a table right here, which is really cool. It's got souvenir shop, trader, jeweler, tailor, inn, armorsmith, tavern, general store, weaponsmith, grocer, apothecary. a bookstore, a music store, and then dual purpose. And then you have a table down here to how they price their items. 3d6 table. Depending on what they roll, they may price things higher than your average store or lower than your average store, which is really cool. Then you have a 2-page spread on just details of the business, like what little nuances make this business different than other businesses of the same type in a different location. I'll read one. So one of the business details that you could roll is, it's called I Quit. And it says, out of nowhere, someone quits loudly and storms off. And then you could kind of build off that. Maybe you'll throw a little plot hook in there. Maybe they quit for certain reasons. Maybe they are an angered employee, and maybe they come back and try to trash the place or hire a mercenary to try to kill this guy. Or you can build off of some of the stuff in this business details area, which is something I really like. And I really like that table a lot. And then you have a special section on just building inns and taverns, more random tables for those. And these things can be applied to any game, and I absolutely love those random tables. If nothing, buy this book for the random tables. They're fantastic random tables. That's one thing I really want to emphasize about the Fantasy Age books. Their plot hooks and random tables have been excellent in every single supplement. And then it has a small random table down here, because we're in the building NPCs section. Random table on how different NPCs are related. Section on personalities and building different personalities. What kind of background do they have? What roles do they have? And some example roles here. And then it goes into another really cool random table called Criminal Enterprises, and I love this random table as well. Excellent. More NPC building, random tables, some example NPCs that people have built. This is the NPC that they built, and you have some stat blocks here for them, and what their personality is. Here's another random NPC that they built, and it's really cool that you can build the same NPC using the tables that they have in the book. Then they go into the section called Building Rewards. Now this one's going to be geared a lot more towards Fantasy Age as well. Because a lot of the rewards in this book are going to give advantages for Fantasy Age itself. So a lot of these are just different rewards. It does give you a section though on honorifics and like making a special title for your characters and stuff like that. Get past the reward section because that's basically self-explanatory, but it's all geared towards Fantasy Age. One thing I will say though is this gives me one of my favorite tools. This was something that was lacking in Fantasy Age until this point, is random magic item or random special item generation. And this is a 1.5-page spread table on generating random items. So like if you're going through a dungeon that you didn't expect to run, or like a one shot or something, this will give you a way to roll up a random item, which is really cool. They kind of had something like that in the companion with the magic artifacts, but this can be geared a lot more towards mundane magic items, or like gives +1 or gives +2. Nothing like overpowered like the artifacts in the companion, but these are things you'll come into contact with a lot more. Building monsters, this is all going to be Fantasy Age specific, but it gives you a lot of cool tips here for balancing monsters and building monsters of different genres. So you have horror here, you have high fantasy, sword and sorcery, then you have the whole section, and this is something that I think was the biggest addition to Fantasy Age as a whole, and one of the reasons why a Fantasy Age GM might want to pick this up is this gives you a very, very in-depth monster creator system, something that was lacking from the Bestiary and the basic rulebook. This really solves that problem. You have random tables, complete mechanics for generating completely homebrew stuff, or if you, like I said, if you just want to roll on a random table, to have that in here as well. But it gives you everything from like how to do the attacks, special qualities they may have, focuses, stat generation, combat traits, what their armor rating should be and whatnot, health, choosing a threat level, and pretty much everything that you could you need. And then it does give you actually one additional monster technically, because this is a basically a sample of something that they made using these monster creation tools. And you can just drop this in if you really wanted to, but there's another monster right there that they built using the tables and stuff. And like I said, here's some random tables for building monsters and modifying monsters. And then the last section here is, well, I think it's, no, you have some more. You have a little bit more. One of the next chapter is really helpful for pretty much any GM in any game. And this one is called Building the Divine. And this is how to build deities and gods in your campaigns. I don't really have any trouble with this, but this is actually a really, really helpful section for those of people that may have struggled in the past with how the deities affect their worlds. I don't really have trouble with this. I know exactly kind of what I want for my deities, but it gives you some really good advice, like can you use existing inspiration? How real are your deities? How present are your gods in your campaign? Ever present without words, history as a thematic inspiration, divine variations. There's a lot of good stuff in this section. I think the gods section is very, very good. And then you have a subsection about designing cults around these deities and whatnot. And then you have some examples like Mare, Mother of Nature, and they also give you artwork for that one, which is really cool. Then they've got some random religion tables, which is fantastic. I love some random tables. This is random religions and cults. Really, really cool. And this one's super in depth. I mean, look at that table. That's crazy. Look at how many options there. And then you have building subgenres, and this is specific towards Fantasy Age, how to modify the Fantasy Age rules to other genres. So you have fantasy horror, urban fantasy, mazes and monsters, sword and sorceries, martial arts fantasy, weird fantasy, post-apocalyptic, historical fantasy, swashbuckling fantasy, mashup, and then it just gives you examples. So it does give you a lot of different tips on how to run Fantasy Age in different genre types, which is really cool. I like that a lot. It does have, I think this is the last chapter here. Yeah, okay, so this is the last chapter. And this is something that a lot of people, this is specific to Fantasy Age, a lot of people have had trouble with in Fantasy Age. And that is building epic campaigns. And these are like your high-level campaigns towards the end of the game. How to run Fantasy Age at later levels, basically, is this entire chapter. Because a lot of people had troubles with it. And yeah, so it gives you like a lot of tips here. So you can tell there's a lot of tips here because there's a lot of author's notes about this section. Epic threats, epic events, epic rewards, high-powered or godlike campaigns, and then it gives you some examples for epic-level campaigns. Like this one's called Dying Gods, which just sounds super cool, and then you have a really cool artwork for that. And then the end here, you do have a campaign sheet, and this is a really cool sheet that I'm really happy to add it to the end of this book, because it basically gives you a little thing where you can fill in important NPCs, campaign arcs, and how long you want to run the campaign arcs. It's just really helpful for planning your campaign in this sheet. So that's basically the entirety of this book. It's a fantastic resource for not only people that are running Fantasy Age, but pretty much people that are running any genre, any game. So definitely recommend this one. I hope you guys enjoyed this video about this. I know I rambled on, but I wanted to make sure I do this book justice, because there's no other reviews on this book yet, and I absolutely love this book, and I love the Fantasy Age system. Highly recommend this system if you're interested in playing some fantasy stuff, that you want something different. I love Green Ronin stuff. Green Ronin, if you're watching it, keep up the good work. A lot of the stuff that I've mentioned in previous videos about Fantasy Age seem to have come into effect for Fantasy Age, so I'm not taking credit for that, but and if Green Ronin's watching, thanks for filling out some of my requests, because I requested more GM stuff, and I also requested for like campaign settings. That's exactly what this is. And then the other thing I wanted in my older videos was more monster stuff, and that's exactly what the Layers book coming out is. So I'm super excited for that. yeah, so let me know what you guys think in the comment box below. Did you get this book, or did you enjoy Fantasy Age, or are you new to Fantasy Age? Let me know in the comment box below. I'm happy to answer any questions about this game, and I hope you guys enjoy this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.